Chapter 15. The Trial. Lucky strode into Dr. Peveril's office shortly before 2 p.m. the next day. The others had already gathered. Dr. Peveril, sitting behind an old and crowded desk, nodded pleasantly at him, and Lucky responded with a grave, "Good afternoon, sir." It was much like the evening of the banquet. Cook was there, of course, looking as always nervous and somehow gaunt. He sat in a large armchair at Dr. Peveril's right, and Bigman's small body squirmed and was nearly lost in an equally large armchair at the left. Mindy's was there, his thin face twisted glumly and his intertwining fingers separating occasionally to drum on his pants leg. Dr. Gardoma sat next to him, stolid, his heavy eyelids lifting to glance disapprovingly at Lucky as he entered. The department heads among the astronomers were there. In fact, the only man who had been present at the banquet but was absent now was Yurtiel. Dr. Peveril began at once in his gentle way. "We can start now, and first a few words for Mr. Starr. I understand that Bigman described this proceeding to you as a trial. Please be assured that it is nothing of the sort. If there is to be a trial, and I hope not, it will take place on Earth with qualified judges and legal counsel. What we are trying to do here is merely to assemble a report for transmission to the Council of Science." Dr. Peveril arranged some of the helter-skelter of objects on his desk and said, "Let me explain why a full report is necessary. In the first place, as a result of Dr. Starr's daring penetration of the sun side, the saboteur who has been upsetting Dr. Mindy's project has been stopped. It turned out to be a robot of Syrian manufacture, which is now no longer functional. Mr. Starr?" "Yes," said Lucky. "The importance of the matter was such that I took the liberty of questioning you when you first were brought in, and when your state was one of only half-consciousness." "I remember that," said Lucky, "quite well." "Would you confirm some of the answers now, for the record?" "I will." "In the first place, are there any other robots involved?" "The robot did not say, but I do not believe there were others. However, it did not say specifically that it was the only robot on Mercury?"
"It did not."
"Then there might be others."
"I don't think so."
"That's only your own opinion, though. The robot didn't say there were no others."
"It did not."
"Very well, then. How many Syrians were involved?"
"The robot would not say. It had been instructed not to."
"Did it locate the base of the Syrian invaders?"
"It said nothing concerning that. It made no mention of Syrians at all."
"But the robot was of Syrian manufacture, wasn't it?"
"It admitted that."
"Ah!"
Dr. Peveril smiled humorously.
"Then it is obvious, I think, that there are Syrians on Mercury, and they are active against us. The Council of Science must be made aware of this. There must be an organized search of Mercury, and if the Syrians evade us and leave the planet, then there must at least be an increased awareness of the Syrian danger."
Cook interposed uneasily.
"There's also the question of the native Mercurian life forms, Dr. Peveril. The Council will have to be informed of that, too."
He turned to address the gathering at large.
"One of the creatures was captured yesterday, and—" The old astronomer interrupted with some annoyance. "Yes, Dr. Cook, the Council shall assuredly be informed. Nevertheless, the Syrian question is what must be kept foremost. Other matters must be sacrificed to the immediate danger. For instance, I suggest that Dr. Mindy's abandon his project until Mercury be made safe for Earthmen."
"Hold on now," cried Mindy's quickly. "That's a lot of money and time and effort invested here."
"I said until Mercury was safe. I do not imply permanent abandonment of Project Light. And because it is necessary to put the Mercurian danger foremost, it is necessary to make sure that Yurtiel's protector, Senator Swenson, be prevented from setting up obstructions over side issues."
Lucky said, "You mean you want to present the senator with a scapegoat in the form of Bigman, neatly ticketed and bound, hand and foot. Then while he's worrying and clawing at Bigman, the chase for Syrians can proceed on Mercury without interference."
The astronomer lifted his white eyebrows. "Scapegoat, Mr. Starr. We just want the facts."
"Well, go ahead, then," said Bigman, moving restlessly in his chair. "You'll get the facts."
"Good," said Dr. Peveril. "As the central figure, do you care to begin? Tell everything that occurred between you and Yurtiel in your own words. Tell it in your own words, but I would appreciate brevity. And remember, these proceedings are being recorded on sound microfilm."
Bigman said, "Do you want me to take my oath?"
Dr. Peveril shook his head.
This is not a formal trial. Suit yourself. And with surprising dispassion, Bigman told the story. Beginning with Yurtiel's slurs on his height and continuing through the encounter in the mines, he ended with the duel. He left out only Yurtiel's threats of action against Lucky Starr and the council. Dr. Gardoma followed, verifying what had occurred on the occasion of the first meeting between Yurtiel and Bigman, and also describing, for the record, the scene at the banquet table. He went on to describe his treatment of Yurtiel after the return from the mines. He said, "He recovered quickly from hypothermia. I didn't ask him for details, and he didn't offer any. However, he asked after Bigman, and from his expression when I said Bigman was entirely well, I should judge that his dislike for Bigman was as great as ever. He didn't act as though Bigman had saved his life, just the same. I must say that from my observation of the man, I should say Yurtiel was not subject to attacks of gratitude." "That is only an opinion," interposed Dr. Peverell hastily, "and I recommend that we not confuse the record by such statements." Dr. Cook came next. He concentrated on the duel. He said, "Bigman insisted on the fight. That's all there was to that. It seemed to me that if I arranged one under low gravity, as Bigman suggested, with witnesses, no harm would be done. We could intervene if things grew serious. I was afraid that if I refused, a fight between them might result without witnesses, and there might be serious results. Of course, the results could scarcely be more serious than they have turned out to be, but I never anticipated that. I ought to have consulted you, Dr. Peverell, I admit that." Dr. Peverell nodded. "You certainly ought to have, but the fact is now that Dr. Bigman insisted on the duel and insisted on a low gravity, didn't he?" "That's right." "And he assured you that he would kill Yurtiel under those conditions." "His exact words were that he would murder the cubber. I think he was only speaking figuratively. I'm sure he didn't plan actual murder." Dr. Peverell turned to Bigman. "Have you any comments in that connection?" "Yes, I do. And since Dr. Cook is on the stand, I want to cross-examine." Dr. Peverell looked surprised. "This isn't a trial." "Listen," said Bigman heatedly. "Yurtiel's death was no accident. It was murder, and I want a chance to prove that." The silence that followed that statement lasted a moment, no more. It was succeeded by confused babbling. Bigman's voice rose to a piercing squeal. "I'm set to cross-examine Dr. Hanley Cook." Lucky Starr said coldly, "I suggest you allow Bigman to go through with this, Dr. Peverell." The old astronomer was the picture of confusion. "Really, I don't— Bigman can't—" He stammered himself into silence. Bigman said, "First, Dr. Cook, how did Yurtiel come to know the route Lucky and I were taking in the mines?" Cook reddened. "I didn't know he knew the route." "He didn't follow us directly. He took a parallel route as though he were intending to catch up and fall behind us well within the mines. After we convinced ourselves that we were alone and unfollowed. To do that, he would have to be certain of the route we were planning to take. Now, Lucky and I planned that route with you and no one else. Lucky didn't tell Yurtiel, neither did I. Who did?" Cook looked wildly about as though for help. "I don't know." "Isn't it obvious you did?" "No, maybe he overheard." "He couldn't overhear marks on a map, Dr. Cook. Let's pass on now. I fought Yurtiel, and if gravity had stayed at Mercurian normal, he would still be alive. But it didn't stay there. It was suddenly hopped up to Earth levels just at the moment where it helped to kill him. Who did that?" "I don't know." "You were the first one at Yurtiel's side. What were you doing? Making sure he was dead?" "I resent that. Dr. Peverell." Cook turned a flaming face toward his chief. Dr. Peverell said with agitation, "Are you accusing Dr. Cook of having murdered Yurtiel?" Bigman said, "Look, the sudden change in gravity pulled me to the ground. When I got to my feet, everyone else was either getting to their feet too or was still on the ground. When 75 to 150 pounds fall on your back without warning, you don't get to your feet in a hurry. But Cook had. He was not only on his feet, he had gotten to Yurtiel's side and was bending over him." "What does that prove?" demanded Cook. "It proves you didn't go down when the gravity went up, or you couldn't have gotten there in time. And why didn't you go down when the gravity went up? Because you expected it to go up and were braced for it. And why did you expect it to go up? Because you tripped the lever." Cook turned to Dr. Peverell. "This is persecution. It's madness." But Dr. Peverell looked at his second in stricken horror. Bigman said, "Let me reconstruct the business. Cook was working with Yurtiel. That's the only way Yurtiel could have learned our route in the mines. But he was working with Yurtiel out of fear. Maybe Yurtiel was blackmailing him. Anyway, the only way Cook could get out from out from under was to kill Yurchiel. When I said I could murder the cobber who fought under low gravity, I must have put an idea into his head. And when we had the fight, he stood there waiting with the lever. That's all." "Wait," cried Cook urgently, almost choked. This is all—" "You don't have to go by me," said Bigman. "If my theory is right, and I'm sure it is, then Yurchiel must have something in writing or on recording or on film that he can hold over Cook's head. Otherwise, Cook wouldn't have felt trapped to the point of murder. So, search Yurchiel's effect. You'll find something, and that'll be it." "I agree with Bigman," said Lucky. Dr. Peverell said in bewilderment, "I suppose it's the only way of settling the matter, though how—" And the air seemed to go out of Dr. Hanley Cook, leaving him pale, shaken, and helpless. "Wait," he said weakly. "I'll explain." And all faces turned toward him. Hanley Cook's lean cheeks were bathed in perspiration. His hands, as he raised them, almost in supplication, trembled badly. He said, "Yurchiel came to me shortly after he arrived on Mercury. He said he was investigating the observatory. He said Senator Swenson had evidence of inefficiency and waste. He said it was obvious that Dr. Peverell ought to be retired, that he was an old man and incapable of bearing under the responsibility. He said I might make a logical replacement." Dr. Peverell, who listened to this with an air of stunned surprise, cried out, "Cook!" "I agreed with him," said Cook sullenly. "You are too old. I'm running the place anyway while you occupy yourself with your serious mania." He turned again to Lucky. "Yurchiel said that if I helped him in his investigation, he would see to it that I'd be the next director. I believed him. Everyone knows Senator Swenson is a powerful man. I gave him a great deal of information. Some of it was in writing and signed. He said he needed it for legal proceedings afterwards. And then he began holding the written information over my head. It turns out that he was a lot more interested in Project Light and the Council of Science. He wanted me to use my position to become a kind of personal spy for him. He made it quite plain that he would go to Dr. Peverell with evidence of what I had done if I refused. That would have meant the end of my career, of everything. I had to spy for him. I had to give information concerning the route Starr and Bigman were to take in the mines. I kept him up to date on everything Mindy's did. Every time I surrendered a little bit more to him, I was more helplessly in his power. And after a while I knew that someday he would break me, no matter how much I helped him. He was that kind of man. I began to feel that the only way I could escape was to kill him, if only I knew how. Then Bigman came to me with his plan to fight Yurchiel under low gravity. He was so confident he could toss Yurchiel about, I thought that I might. The chances would be 1 in 100, maybe 1 in 1,000, but I thought, what was there to lose? So I stood at the pseudograv controls and waited my chance. It came and Yurchiel died. It worked perfectly. I thought we'd go down as an accident. Even if Bigman were in trouble, then the council could get him out of it. No one would be hurt except Yurchiel, and he deserved it 100 times over. Anyway, that's it. In the odd silence that followed, Dr. Peverell said huskily, "Under the circumstances, Cook, you will of course consider yourself relieved of duty and under a—" "Hey! Hold it!" cried Bigman. "The confession isn't complete yet. Look here, Cook, that was the second time you tried to kill Yurchiel, wasn't it?" "The second time?" Cook's tragic eyes lifted. "What about the gimmick Inso suit? Yurchiel said it for us to watch out for one, so he must have had experience with it. He made out Mindy's was doing it, but that Yurchiel was a lion cobber, and nothing he says has to be believed. What I'll say is that you tried to kill Yurchiel that way, but when he caught the suit and forced you to transfer it to our room when we came, then he warned us about it just to get us thinking he was on our side and make trouble for Mindy's. Isn't that so?" "No!" cried Cook. "No, I had nothing to do with that Inso suit, nothing." "Come on," began Bigman. "We're not gonna believe—" But now Lucky Starr got to his feet. "It's all right, Bigman. Cook had nothing to do with the Inso suit. You can believe him. The man responsible for the slashed Inso suit is the man responsible for the robot." Bigman stared at his tall friend incredulously. "You mean the Syrians, Lucky?" "No Syrians," said Lucky. "There are no Syrians on Mercury. There never have been."